Good morning. Welcome to Carmel Valley Community Chapel. It's good to have you all with us. I want to thank Bill Salmon for being our liturgist this morning, and Holly Thompson for being our deacon to the diaspora. At this point in the service, I invite all who are able to please stand and join responsively in the call to worship printed in the bulletin.
All. It is the language that makes us human. One half of language is to listen.
Silence can exist without speech, but speech cannot live without silence. Listen to the speech of others. Listen even more to their silence.
To pray is to listen to the revelation of nature, to the meanings of events.
To listen to music is to listen also to silence, and to find the stillness deepened and enriched. Let us join together in singing our opening hymn, which is the bulletin insert, Spirit, Spirit of Gentleness. Please be seated. At this point in the service, I invite us all into a few minutes of silent prayer and meditation. I invite you to take this time to center your hearts, your minds, your bodies, your spirits into this here and now that we are creating together. The musical meditation that will round out our silent meditation is a little longer than usual, and it in itself has a, I think, very important musical message. So I invite you to receive the musical meditation not just as an interlude, but as a real meditation in and of itself. Let's join together in silent meditation. Our reading this morning is from the book of Joel. The book of Joel is a short book. It is only 3 chapters long. Scholars are not sure when it was written, though many believe that it was sometime in the post-exilic era, which would be 5th to 3rd century BCE. There is no historical or biographical information that we have about the prophet Joel. This book is a short but profound theological reflection on catastrophe, devastation, and trauma. The major calamity that is referred to in the book of Joel is death and destruction wrought by locusts and the ensuing famine that produces. There's also a brief mention of drought and of wildfires. This devastation leads to communal lament in the book of Joel, in which not only the people lament, but so do the animals, and the earth itself laments. And the portion we're going to hear right now for today is a moment in the text where things shift from universal catastrophe to universal restoration. Let's take a listen to our reading for today.
The reading this morning is from Joel 2:21 through 27. Do not fear, O land, exult and rejoice, for Adonai has done enormous things. Do not fear, O beasts of the field, for the wilderness meadows sprout with grass, for the trees yields its fruit. For the fig tree and the vine put forth their wealth. And children of Zion, exult and rejoice in Adonai your God. For God has given you the early rain as bounty, and brought down the rain for you, early rain and later rain as before. And the threshing floors shall fill with grain, and the vats overflow with new wine and oil. And I will pay you back for the years that the grasshopper ate, the swarm, the grub, and the locust, my great force that I sent against you. And you shall eat, be continuously sated, and you shall praise the name of Adonai your God, who has done wondrously for you. And my people shall not be shamed evermore, and you shall know that I am in the midst of Israel, and I am Adonai your God. There is none else, and my people shall not be shamed evermore. Thus ends the reading.
Let's join together in singing the hymn, God of the Sparrow, God of the Whale. It's number 122 in the hymnal. want to begin by thanking Reverend Derek Williams for leading the service a week ago when I was on vacation, making my way through 4 different time changes in 8 days. It's more up and down in the air than I usually do in that short a time. During this week, when I was away, visited my brother Mike and his wife Suzanne in Prescott, Arizona. And then the 3 of us, after a few days in Arizona, traveled to Houston, Texas. And so today, I thought we'd take a trip over to Bayou country. And that's why I've chosen the blues for our offertory and postlude music. Although these are tunes that you might associate New Orleans with more than Houston, Texas. But there are many cities that claim to be the original place where the first blues were created. Memphis and New Orleans are the 2 that are usually fighting over it. And I remember when I was at a conference years ago and having dinner at the bar, and there was a gentleman sitting next to me, and we started talking about ragtime and music and the blues. And he was from, I think, Tennessee or maybe even from Memphis. And I asked him where he thought the blues originated. Was it New Orleans or not? And he's an African-American man, and he looked at me very sincerely and said to me simply, "The blues were born wherever people were in pain." I thought that's a wonderful description of where, when, and why the blues came to be. But did you know, speaking of Bayou country, that Houston's moniker is, quote unquote, the Bayou City? Houston is crisscrossed by waterways of all types, including rivers, bayous, and creeks. Now, does everyone here know what a bayou is? Does anyone not know what a bayou is? I wasn't sure myself, and I had to look it up. According to National Geographic, a bayou is a slow-moving creek or a swampy section of a river or a lake. They're usually found in flat areas where water collects in pools. Bayous are often associated with the southeastern part of the United States. Bayous are usually shallow and sometimes heavily wooded. They can be freshwater, they can be saltwater, they can be a combination. Bayou vegetation ranges from tiny mosses to huge cypress trees, and they provide a habitat for animals as diverse as shrimp, wading birds, and alligators. Bayous are important in the southeastern part of the United States for their unique ecosystem, an ecosystem that helps other ecosystems. It nurtures species that will move on to other ecosystems. It's also important for flood mitigation when heavy rains fall. It's also very important for species preservation. And all this is a reminder to me of just how interconnected humans, plants, animals, land, and water are in order for life not just to exist, but to thrive on this earth. And this morning, I want to tell you a little bit about my Uncle Armand Iramatagi and the bayou in Houston that is named after him. Now, I never knew him very well. I only met him twice that I can remember in my life, although the first one I don't remember, was when I was 3 years old, and the other time was when I was about 7 years old. And he died when I was only 10. He was born in 1923 to Mexican immigrants, one of whom was of Spanish Basque descent. And because I was so young when he died, and that he lived in Houston while my parents, my brothers, and I lived in Southern California, I was not very aware of all the details of his life. So I'm going to read a bit about Armand from the book Del Pueblo, A History of Houston's Hispanic Community by Thomas Krennick. Krennick, in this chapter, is writing about the history of what would become the Chicano movement for educational advances. One of the main instigators of this movement was a group called the Association for the Advancement of Mexican Americans. And here's what he says. During these efforts, quote, "During these efforts for Chicano educational advancement, Houston lost the most illustrious public educator that its Mexican-American community had ever produced when Armand Iramategui died at the hands of robbers on January 27, 1970. After serving in World War II, Armand graduated from Rice Institute in 1947 with a major in electrical engineering. He found his real passion in life, however, when he was struck by the wonders of nature. During the early 1950s, working as a real estate developer of wooded property, Armand Iramategui became enthralled with the trees along Buffalo Bayou and became involved in bird watching with the local outdoor nature club. Savoring the beauty of wild habitats, he developed as one of the state's outstanding naturalists. He won election as president of the Texas Ornithological Society and ultimately head of the Texas Conservation Council. He also taught science for a time in local public schools and became a self-taught astronomer. His knowledge led him to become curator of the Burke Baker Planetarium in 1964. And in that position, he soon appeared on local public television service spots 3 mornings a week to explain the wonders of the night sky to children, a role that endeared him to thousands of Houstonians. The children learned from him about the early astronomers, what constellations could be seen, and their links to Greek and other mythologies. He often spoke to school classes about these topics, always taking the time to talk with youngsters regarding such matters. Reflective by nature, Iramategui told a newspaper reporter in 1969 that he saw the space program as, quote, a reflection of what the Creator has endowed humanity with, an infinite intellect for increasing human understanding. The author goes on to say that people often asked him about his last name, a situation to which I am somewhat acquainted. And Armand would explain that Iramategui originated from the Basque region of northern Spain, and that poetically it meant, quote, one who draws inspiration from the view from the top of the mountain. Isn't that great? I love that. That's my last name. Going on, the author writes, as he emerged as a leading force in Texas nature conservation efforts during the 1950s, Armand had many disciples among Houston's upper middle class environmentalists who looked to him for inspiration. U.S. Congressperson Bob Eckhart saw Iramategui as a citizen most responsible for enacting the Texas Open Beaches Act. because of a successful signature campaign Iramatigi spearheaded in 1959 for that legislation to overcome special interest standing in the way. On the evening of January 27, 1970, Iramatigi traveled down the Southwest Freeway to escape the bright lights of the city so that he could photograph the Tago Sato Kosaka comet. You all remember that one, right? A celestial body that he had done much to popularize among Houstonians. Unfortunately, he had a flat tire. 3 individuals who randomly came along at first offered to assist him, but decided to rob him, and in the course of this felony, mindlessly shot him to death by the side of the freeway. The passing of Armand Iramatigi deprived the nation of a deeply sensitive, gentle, philosophical, and productive human being. But Iramatigi's associates carried on the work. They successfully pushed for a measure that Armand had championed to save what was then called Middle Bayou, near Pasadena, part of the greater Houston area, to preserve it as a natural. Testing, 1, 2. Do I need to wait some more, Brian, or?
You should be good.
Okay.
It was just the sound.
So as far as his efforts go that were carried on in his name after his death, they resulted in changing the waterway's name to Armand Bayou and to the creation of the Armand Bayou Nature Center in the 1970s, which eventually consisted of approximately 2,500 acres of pristine bayou lands being set aside in perpetuity. It amounted to a tribute to a renowned environmentalist who had begun life as a child of unassuming Mexican immigrants. And my brother and sister-in-law and I were there at the Bayou, the Nature Center, for their 50th anniversary celebration, and also the dedication of a brand new visitors center called the Hannah Ginsburg Center. Now, the mission of the Nature Center is twofold: to preserve the habitat with which they have been entrusted in this bayou. Second, to provide opportunities for people to experience and to understand the local ecosystem. Armand Bayou Nature Center is home to over 370 species of birds, mammals, reptiles, and amphibians, including, I might add, alligators. The Nature Center offers hiking trails, exhibits, field trips, scout programs, birding. There's a historic farm, the Martin Farm, on the property as well. So basically, this center, the work of ABNC, is all about preservation, connection, and education. But something new that I learned on this trip were some of the details about the other people besides Armand who were part of the movement, especially one woman named Hannah Ginsburg. Mark Kramer, in his blog post, "If Not for Hannah," writes, Quote, Armand's tragic death in 1970 inspired Hannah Ginsburg to start a campaign to raise funds and public support for the purchase of the 2,500 acres of land now preserved as Armand Bayou Nature Center in the memory of Armand Iramategui. The inspired and tireless efforts of Hannah and the local, regional, and national coalitions of people and organizations led to Armand Bayou Nature Center becoming a well-established nonprofit organization with the mission of preserving and restoring 3 diverse and imperiled Gulf Coast habitats. The tragic loss of this beloved figure was a shock to the community and those who loved and knew him best. Hannah Ginsburg was one who had been a friend and colleague with Armand. His passing at the age of 46 helped to produce the effort to memorialize his memory. Armand had been a catalyst for the formation of many local groups, clubs, and environmental actions, but one of his primary passions was for advocating for open space. In fact, he was scheduled to speak the next day after his murder in support for the establishment of a county parks department. Armand had campaigned for several large preservations efforts, including the Big Thicket National Preserve, Padre Island National Seashore, and the Texas Open Beaches Act. Of particular local preservation interest was the wild land along Middle Bayou, which is now Armand Bayou. And while Armand had only visited the area a few times, he made mention of the beauty of the area to several people, and slowly the idea emerged that a park named to memorialize Armand would be a very worthy cause. The 1960s were a time of growth and upheaval in America. In addition to the environmental movement, the women's movement was also awakening. Hannah Ginsburg was a formative figure in both. Hannah was no stranger to taking on a challenge. She was born in Prague in 1925. She left Czechoslovakia at the age of 13 on one of the last Kinder trains before Hitler's occupation. So began Hannah's campaign to raise funds and public support for the purchase of the parkland. Hannah's motto was always, "Wouldn't it be wonderful? Wouldn't it be wonderful if Houston had one day the largest piece of woodland located in the middle of the city? Wouldn't it be wonderful if the area was a preserve large enough to provide habitat for many types of wildlife like deer, red wolves, prairie chickens, coyotes, and alligators? Wouldn't it be wonderful if the area was a place for people of all ages to relax, to learn, to recreate, and reconnect with nature? The sense of urgency grew as plans became public that suburbia was planned to sprawl over what many considered to be the largest and most beautifully preserved piece of wild land remaining in Harris County. Hannah drove the effort of building a coalition, fundraising at the local, at the state, and even federal levels, and she was successful at each. 4 years later, she and her coalition had raised $6.5 million. And that was back in the early 70s, folks. Closer to modern day, in 2005, Hannah Ginsburg gave a presentation at the Armand Bayou Nature Center at a volunteer meeting. And she recounted much of what Kramer has written about and what I've just read to you. But she also left her personal memoir of that monumental effort. And Kramer, being there, heard her reflections and has a copy of her memoir and read it. And one of the new insights that he had is that although Armand never campaigned to preserve lands along the bayou, his spirit was felt throughout the effort. And Kramer said that hearing that from Hannah stopped him, and it was an aha moment, a realization. He writes, "First, I realized that much of our story of Armand Bayou Nature Center had been misquoted through the years. Armand was not the champion who had campaigned and fundraised for preservation of the bayou. In fact, Armand had only visited the bayou a very few times in his life. It was Hannah. She was the one who drove the effort of fundraising that ultimately preserved the lands." Hannah died in October of 2013, and her memorial service was a tribute to a life of personal commitment and dedication to local conservation. Her dogged persistence contributed to one speaker at the memorial saying, quote, "When we saw Hannah coming down the sidewalk, we would try to cross the street." And here's what Kramer has to say about Hannah Ginsburg. "Because of Hannah, I, like so many others, have discovered the natural world and the beauty of the wilderness. Because of Hannah, I, like so many others, have found a quiet place to contemplate the beauty of the prairie sunset and the mystery of the night sky. Because of Hannah, hundreds of thousands of children have seen their first caterpillar become butterflies, and hundreds of thousands of parents have seen that wonder in their children's eyes. Because of Hannah, the alligator, otter, pelican, osprey, and eagle have returned to the bayou." And Kramer concludes, "Because of these things, when I was with Hannah, I felt like I was with a giant, a hero, and she leaves a legacy that generations of humans and wild creatures alike will be the better for all that she did." I think that is so very important, that the history of Armand Bayou isn't about one person. It's about not just two people, Armand and Hannah. It's about many people, many communities, many coalitions that joined together in making this possible. All those interconnections, folks. And that is what makes any social change possible. Of course, there are individuals that stand out, but when you look a little deeper, you find that there are many, many individuals that made significant contributions, maybe even necessary contributions that would not have had come to fruition if they hadn't made those contributions. And there's a connection here with our scripture reading this morning. Our section of the book of the prophet Joel reminds us that the beloved community includes humans, all humans, includes animals, plants, and the earth, the land itself. All of that is a part of us. And we are so all wondrously interconnected in ways that we know and see and feel, and in ways that we have not yet recognized. I think that there is no salvation apart from the salvation, the redemption, and the restoration of the whole. which means when we are preserving the natural environment, when we are protecting species from going extinct, when we are cleaning up our act so that we have clean water to drink, clean air to breathe, and a healthy ecosystem for all, we are contributing to the salvation of the whole, the restoration of the world, the healing of the universe. And in this work, from a biblical perspective and from a deeply human perspective, there are no individuals. We are interconnected. So let us continue to nurture, sustain, and evolve as a community of interconnected beings. Let us give in the spirit of joy and generosity.
Please join me in the blessings of the gifts printed in your bulletin. May we become a more open people, open-minded in hearing your word and wisdom, open-hearted in healing a broken world, open-handed in heeding your call for charity and active love. With thanks for all good gifts we present the portion of our substance and the whole of ourselves. Amen.
Please be seated. At this point in the service, I invite us into a time of sharing our joys and our concerns with the community. If there's anything you'd like to share, please get my attention. I'll bring the microphone to you. And if there's any way in which we can respond to your sharing, let us know by concluding with a phrase that we can all repeat together with you. Is there anything that folks wish to share this morning? Oh, I have something. I'm happy to report that Ken Morley is recovering. He's back at home in his apartment with Faye. He had some pneumonia and maybe a few other issues, and he was in a care facility for a while, but from all I hear, it sounds like he's recovering well. So, thanks be to God. And Ken, for your continued recovery, we pray. God, hear our prayers. Christy, it's so great to have you with us today.
Thank you. It's great to be back. Well enough. And I just wanted to send out prayers and love to Edie Wiltsey. And wish her the best in her recovery journey and let her know she's in all of our hearts and prayers all the time.
Yeah.
So.
Thanks. God, hear our prayers. Diane.
I just wanted to ask for prayers for my niece, Brianne, and her husband and their 4 children. Just had a fire in their house, and it's quite severe, and they'll probably have to be out of their house for at least a year. So just prayers for them, that this big family can find, things go smoothly for them to find somewhere to live and all that. So they live in Texas. God, hear our prayers.
God, hear our prayers. Steve, so great to have you and Barbara back with us.
Glad to be here. As a result of November 5th, I found myself in an emotional wilderness. And then, through a musical experience, I was taken to a different level. And this service here continues that more hopeful future.
Thanks. Thanks be to God. I also want to ask for all of your prayers for Peter Meckel. He had to go back to Stanford for an operation earlier this week. I talked to Elise on Thursday, but I haven't been able to talk to her since then, so I don't know the very latest. But let's keep Peter and his health, healing, and recovery in our thoughts and our prayers. God, hear our prayers. If there's nothing else that folks wish to share at this point, I invite us into a few moments of silent prayer together. After a little bit of time has gone by, I'll invite us all to join together in saying the prayer of Jesus that's printed in the bulletin. Let us join together now in silent prayer. Gracious Spirit, in these challenging times, we thank you for your presence with us, for our being present for one another, and for this universal network of connectedness that unites us all, no matter how different we look, how different we think, how different we act. May your Spirit be upon us all, luring us into ever more creative ways of healing our society, our world, and one another. For we are all part of that hope. Hear us now as we say this new version of that ancient prayer that our brother Jesus taught us to pray, saying, Eternal Spirit, earth maker, pain bearer, life giver, source of all that is and that shall be, Father and Mother of us all, loving God, in whom is heaven. The hallowing of your name shall echo through the universe. The way of your justice be followed by the peoples of the earth. Your heavenly will be done by all created beings. Your commonwealth of peace and freedom sustain our hope and come on earth. With the bread we need for today, feed us. In the hurts we absorb from one another, forgive us. In times of temptation and test, strengthen us. From the grip of all that is evil, free us. For you reign in the glory of the power that is love, now and forever. Amen. If anyone has any announcements, this is the time to make them. I would just draw your attention to the schedule for this week. On Tuesday, there will be a link going out to a pre-recorded meditation service. And on Thursday, the Friends of Rippling River will be meeting here in the sanctuary in the afternoon. Are there any other announcements that anyone has to make? Well then, let us join together. Oh yes, Lamont, coming your way.
One of the big deals that is happening with the Carmel Valley Association is that we are promoting the Dark Skies Initiative, which is a worldwide thing to limit ambient light and manage it in such a way that it doesn't hurt animals, birds migrating, who migrate a lot at night, I've learned. And John Heil on CVA is leading the charge, and we are working on getting a Dark Skies Initiative regional approval for this area. And the lights at the stadium in Carmel High School, which I opposed, are dark sky valid, for want of a better word.
Really?
Yeah. So it's happening. I mean, it's happening. We're turning. It's like turning a steamer. You just don't do it immediately. It takes a while. But dark skies are becoming a big deal, and because it's good for the environment and for animals. So if you hear about it, talk it up. Dark Sky Initiative. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that to our attention. Yes, Bill.
Served on the Carmel Valley Advisory Committee, which is a committee that reviews buildings in Carmel Valley, and at the time it was just Carmel Valley Village. And one of our mandates was to limit lighting on existing and new buildings. And so I think the effort was well done. And so when you arrive in the village, the feeling should be one of a rural atmosphere and not of a lot of really bright lights. So hopefully our work at that time, it was a while back, but hopefully it made a difference. So thank you.
Thank you, Bill. A wonderful testimony to our coalitions that extend not just within but beyond this chapel. Well, if there's nothing else that folks wish to share, I invite all who are able to stand and join in singing our closing hymn, O Day of Peace That Dimly Shines, number 729. And you're going to get a quick introduction this time. Our benediction this morning is not an original one. It is a poem by Chelan Harkin. Receive now the benediction. It's when the earth shakes and foundations crumble that our light is called to rise up. It's when everything falls away and shakes us to the core and awakens all of our hidden ghosts, that we dig deeper to find once inaccessible strength. It's in times when division is fierce that we must reach for each other and hold each other much, much tighter. Do not fall away now. This is the time to rise. Your light is being summoned. Your integrity is being tested that it may stand more tall. When everything collapses, we must find within us that which is indomitable. Rise and find the strength in your heart. Rise and find the strength in each other. Burn through your devastation, make it your fuel. Bring forth your light. Now is not the time to be afraid of the dark. Amen.